Okay, hopefully this is in good frame. I've selected this hammerstone preform of raw root beer chart. I've got my right leg sort of pushed against the piece of the antler there. I'm going to be doing trimming and platform setting using the edge of the punch, and then be pretty much straight in for the major work. So I've got this piece of leather for when I'm going to need some support underneath, but for a lot of this trimming I won't. I have my medium hard sandstone abrader that I'm going to use for scrunching, some platform setup, and things like that. So let's select an area to remove a flake. Let's just do some trimming first. It's kind of cool to get into a tool that you haven't used in so long. And when... Get him, Rico! The squirrel action is high today, so might be some noise. When I do this trimming, I just sort of keep my finger underneath the edge a lot of times. This is such a good rock. Back off in the angle when I'm trimming along, and I just want to kind of get rid of this cortex and square area. So if it's deep, just back off in the angle. Move over. Making isolated platforms with the punch and it saves a lot of time compared to pressure. So we have this lowered. See what I just did? I trimmed that down. Now I'm going to be on the cortex is soft, so I'm going to lose a little bit of energy because I got a tiny bit of cortex there, but I think I'd be able to get in right there and punch a flake. So let's put leather underneath it. Now keep in mind that support is really important, and if you're squeezing and bending with your thumb, then it doesn't matter how good the platform is. If you're pushing and effectively like this, then when the flake releases, it's going to lose mass and it's going to stress. The flakes cause a lot of stress, one, if they're punching through a lot of thickness on one side compared to the other, or if you're putting any pressure like that. If you're putting tons of back pressure, you could do an experiment every time where if you pushed super hard this way and then you had a nice ridge that was going, it's always going to go to the support and expand. And then that's how you can, sometimes you want to get a flake to do that and roll through, but you have to have the feel of it down to where it doesn't exaggerate and do too much. So having the right support is important. So I'm going to put this leather underneath. I'm going to find the spot on the platform. I'm also going to use my right leg to keep this punch, from just a little bit more energy into the flake. Make sure I give it a good abrade. See how nice that feathered out right to the back edge? There's a nice smooth plane. My punch did catch a little extra right there. And as you go, you want to make sure that your platforms don't lead for extraneous overstrike on edges. So you just have to address it in a later stage if that keeps happening. So the contouring flakes do blending into ridges. Now we'll try to get one to go most of the way up there, to just bring the width a little bit. Isolate with the punch. See how I did that? It's sticking out. Abrade is key. Abrading platforms, if I had like a silica carbide abrader and just went like this, then all of a sudden I've made a square edge on that platform and I've ruined it all. So the shapes and the platforms and the contact of the punch is something that just takes, it's just, it has to be more precise than it does with copper. If you're switching from a copper punch setup to a beam punch like this, you're going to want to retrain yourself. And very experienced knappers that can get away with some little silica there, but I would suggest that you just use more elbow grease and use the sandstone or another abrader for each salon frame. So I can adjust the angle. I can rock this preform a little bit since I'm going towards the tip up here. I can address this angle here. I've got a lot of room for movement. From my trimming flakes like this to my flakes that are flat like this, and I can just tilt it a little bit. That's perfect. Now remove that square edge. The direction of the force, you can see how I pushed it, caused a little undulation there, and it did nice. Another thing that gets in the way of people's learning this stuff fast is they'll get out a preform that they had percussion using another tool. They'll have a couple really nice flakes like that, and then they'll go back to using their other little bopper or their billet or whatever and start doing platform setup because they're more comfortable with that. And trust me, if you can learn to do all the trimming in the little flakes with the same punch you're using for the big flakes, then it'll really shorten your learning curve. So we need to lose, this would make a nice Clovis because of this glassy chert, but we have tons of width. So if that's the way I'm going to go with this, then I need to do some more trimming. Another advantage of this technique on early preforms is you can do those short flakes back and forth. Just do a lot of abrading and then just sort of zigzag your way around the edge. It's an early strategy a lot, is to just do neighboring flakes. Grind down, come down. Get one there, and grind. And here. Grind. There. See that flake there? Now normally you think, oh, trim and blend in there. What you can do is just give it a little braid. And then you've got a really high platform. So I've got one here, and I've got one here. And then you think, well, normally trim and do blending in there, but a lot of times what they did is just come in here, another high platform. That one I didn't grind quite enough. See that? And grind. this. I need to get a little punch flake off this corner where this hammerstone flake sort of dove in a little bit. Did pretty good. Got a square bottom, so back off the angle. Finding I haven't used this side of the punch much for trimming, so I'm looking for a spot to get in there. There. And take care of that. So I don't know how much more this is going to be useful without this making a 15 or 20 minute longer video. At this stage, you have a nice sinuous cutting edge. This could be used as a tool for a while. And then flakes could be had as the edges get thicker, you know, nice controlled full-length flakes. But at this stage I'd need to do a little bit more width eating and a little bit more trimming to get those flakes, because we're at the stage where one more set of those combined with maybe one from the base that could then be built into the finished point that could serve as a flute. Some Clovis points are formally fluted at a certain stage, and I think maybe those are later, where the flute is something that's, you know, they go to small punch work and then they dome and plane it and then come in with a big anvil tips they can get their energy in, and then some better support to do a big punch flake or an assisted pressure / punch flake. But a lot of Clovises are just big flakes, and then sometimes they'll just build it around one from the side that looks like, it's hard to tell when you do the margin reshaping, which it came from the base or from the margin, and then maybe another punch flake on the other side. So this would be a good stopping point, and maybe I'll turn it on when I do. I don't know if I have time to finish this right now, but I've got another little punch. I don't know where it is. A little narrower one that I can do some final trimming with, and maybe the second flute, depending on how deep in the base we have to get on this one. So yeah, the main tips for this video are locked in support, leather wedge. Doesn't have to be a peg and a tie, it can be attached some other way, that doesn't really matter. You can work on the left leg or the right leg, but you want to have it control the inward and keep the tip dressed. If it gets too divotty for early work, you need to keep that filed out. And then we went through the different forms of leather support, and that's a good stopping point for now, I think.